And we're back, and we have a bunch of familiar faces this evening. Beside me, John Wheaton from the Rights of Savages, former U.S. Air Force veteran, or actually he's a veteran now, formerly active duty Air Force for 12 years. Beside him are in-house Central Intelligence Agent Jeff MD, aka 007. And for all y'all over there in Great Britain who want Jeff MD to run for president in 2028, I have it on authority that he has formed a committee and that he's taken your advice under consideration. Below him are undercover S2 intel agent, and beside him, a new face, Jeff O'Donnell. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
So it wouldn't do you any justice to have me cover your illustrious background. So I'm going to have you introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, thank you. I've been a computer software and database and systems professional for 41 years. I've worked with Rockwell International, Westinghouse Nuclear, which was interesting, and a bunch of other places like that. I've been private sector. Also had my own companies and, in software. And recently, after 2020, I kind of ditched everything I was doing and started looking at the data from the 2020 election and the election since. And that's pretty much taken up 23 out of my 24 hours a day since then.
That actually sounds fairly familiar. So I'm going to look after some quick house cleaning stuff. We start with our conflicted question of the day. And then actually I want to pull up your website and the movie that you've done, Jeff, and we'll kick off this conversation there. But I have a question for everybody before we do the conflicted question. It's Kamala Harris's 60th birthday today. Should we be wishing her a happy birthday, or how do you guys want to handle that officially from Survival Dispatch? Don't everybody speak at once, by the way.
I hope she has a happy retirement.
I knew we could count on Jeff MD. Personally, I was going to go the Donald Trump. I was going to say right now, until this election's over, she's our enemy. So we're not going to wish her happy birthday, but we can be friends after the election, maybe. Does anybody else want to wish Kamala Harris happy birthday? Jeff O'Donnell.
She's not a nice lady. She's just a nice lady.
I will wish her a happy birthday and hope that no one cares about her 61st.
Fair enough. Well said. All right. So let's pull up the conflicted question. So the conflicted question is from these card games from Conflicted the Game, conflictedthegame.com. We don't get paid by them. They're just really cool people, and it helps drive engagement for our audience to answer questions, typically from post-apocalyptic scenarios. So I'll pose the question now, then all five of us will answer it at the end of the episode. And we'd like to see your answers down below in the comment section, regardless of which platform you're watching this on. So we have a new player. And again, I'm not familiar with all the background to these people who are referenced in the conflicted games. I know Gordon comes from one of the books that the Angry American wrote, but we have a new one, Sebastian. So maybe somebody can explain that to us in the chat. But Sebastian is faced with a decision to continue to serve his country or to take care of his family. Where would you personally draw the line between serving society and taking care of your family? Are you a traitor to your profession if you leave your post to protect and care for your family? The reason that I chose that one, I think it was maybe like the third one I pulled out of the deck, is the recent updates to the DoD Directive 5240.01 authorizing our military to use lethal force against Americans on American soil under very vague terms, mutual aid requested from any law enforcement agency, whether it be city, feds, or somewhere in between. So interesting question for this evening. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Black Forest Supplement. Again, S2 and I have been taking these for about 7 months now. This is an OTC over-the-counter product called NMN. Wow, I have a hard time with that one. NMN. Say that 10 times fast. Anyway, the FDA is trying to shut them down with this right now at the request of Big Pharma. They want to turn this into prescription only for anti-aging. I'm not a doctor. I can't speak to anti-aging. What I can tell you is that it has a very tangible effect on my energy level. And keep in mind, I started training the Tuesday after Labor Day, 1982, and competed professionally for many years. this is the only OTC product I've ever taken that I can feel the difference on. And S2 mentioned it's good for brain fog as well. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if I go off it, I'll slide even further into senior citizenship here now, right now that I'm past 55.
You'll be Joe
careful what you
Biden
wish
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Be careful what you wish for.
I'm not wishing for it. Trust me. I feel my age today for some particular reason. This episode's also brought to you by Goldco. There's a link down below. They have this really awesome wealth guide. And even if you're not in a position, let's say, to accumulate this massive amount of wealth, that wealth guide covers various things that you should be doing in light of how crazy things are potentially going to be between now and January the 6th. And January the 6th is the date, by the way, not the 20th. And we'll certainly touch on that as we work our way through this episode. We'll have live episodes, by the way, tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern as well. And last update would be if you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, we have free memberships and we have $9.99 a month memberships. The $9.99 a month memberships gets access to everything, behind the scenes content, early access to content. You also get access to a secure encrypted chat now on Signal using the Signal app if you're a paying member. I put through a post out there yesterday, maybe the day before. I think we've got about 25, 30 people have already jumped on them. So if the kid hits the fan, that's kind of a refuge where people can go and get intel, because we certainly we won't get it from mainstream media. And based on what happened a few years ago on January the 6th, it would not be out of the realm of possibility for this currently installed administration to tell social media companies that they're not allowed to broadcast out anything related to whatever zaniness is going on at the time. So that's it for that. Jeff O'Donnell, I want to bring up one of your websites here. Let's see here. Give me 2 seconds. We've got 20 gazillion tabs open as usual. There it is. All right. So Jeff O'Donnell, step us through this plethora of information. I mean, how many parts are to this? 7, 8 parts to your movie?
I set about doing a documentary earlier this year, and it ended up being a 7-part documentary because I wanted to basically make a report back to the people of what I'd found over the last 4 years. And I've found a lot. Spoiler warning. I'm sure there's, some of the people who are listening are probably very aware of the problems, the big time fraud that we've had in our elections. Others, maybe not so much so. And I decided just to take the things that I had seen personally, the things that I had developed, things that I had found, and put them into. And when I first started, I thought, well, maybe I can get a half hour or 45 minutes here. The first cut of the movie was 4 hours. Cut it back to 3 hours, and then further cut it into 7 easily digestible under half an hour segments, each dealing with a different type of election fraud problems, whatever I found. For instance, the first one deals with our problems with the registration that I found, voter registration. The second one goes into the problems of our election machines. And I was the person who got to go in and find the bad stuff that was in the Mesa County, Colorado Dominion server that was saved by Tina Peters from destruction. Those of you who know about her, if not, you should look up the story because it's very important. Yes.
Yeah, it's super important. Jeff, do you want to tell the story, basically how she got some crazy activist judge and she's now been sent to jail?
This all started. Tina Peters was running the elections in Mesa County, Colorado. And in 2021, they had held the election in 2020, and then in 2021, they held a municipal election. Admittedly, she said there were some things about that didn't seem right, but she was pretty much a, hey, our elections are safe and secure person. Then she caught wind of the fact that the Secretary of State of Colorado and Dominion were coming in on a day in May to put a new version of the Dominion software on their election server. And then she quickly got confirmation that this isn't like upgrading your Outlook or your Firefox browser. When they upgrade the system, it completely does a overwrite of the entire disk. It's basically putting a new disk image on the disk. So everything, all the election records, and there were records on there going back to 2019 actually, would have been destroyed. And so what happened was she tried to, immediately tried to get a backup of this. Could not get help from the county or county IT and all this kind of stuff. Well, she decided to bring somebody in. This is where she ran into legal problems because she basically had to have that person come in using somebody else's key card. They came in, they were a very, very experienced computer professional. They imaged the hard drive before the Dominion people overrode it. Then they imaged it. They came back and actually imaged it afterwards to prove that they had indeed wiped out everything on there. So that was the crux of what became her legal problems, because she was then brought up on charges for everything from impersonation to there's a laundry list of charges that she led her lied to her people and all that kind of stuff. And then she gets in front of this judge recently who refused to allow anything into the trial that dealt with anything that she found, anything that was found from what she did. So in other words, they were not allowing her to use her intent or the results of what she did in any way, not even as a sidebar. It could not be to the jury. As a result, the trial was several days of repeating the judge going, sustained, objection, sustained. Anytime she tried to defend, or her witnesses tried to defend her. So it really was a kangaroo court. They sentenced her guilty, or they found her guilty, and then they sentenced her just recently. And the judge threw the book at her, gave her 9 years total in prison for what she did. And she's a Gold Star mom. First time she's ever been in trouble in her entire life. She's 68, 69 years old. So they threw the book at her. And then not only did he give those 9 years, he gave her the biggest tongue lashing, just demeaned her while he was giving the sentence. It was, I'll use the term demonic, honestly. Other people who have seen it agree with that term. It was them just congratulating themselves all over that they had punished this person who had dared try to get in their way.
Great summary, Jeff. I really appreciate that. We didn't have that in the brief for this evening, but I'm really glad you brought it up, because this is one more reason for me, at least, to hope that we can get Donald Trump back in power to rectify the wrong stuff that's been done, not just the J6ers, but by her, for example. And we just had a comment up there that one of our subscribers in Michigan just mentioned. There's like over 500,000 more people registered to vote than those old enough to vote. And I think the breakdown approximately on this, if memory serves me right, is there should be about 8 million people on the voter rolls for Michigan, and there's something like 8.5 million. So clearly we have a lot to discuss tonight. There's lots of thievery that's already underway. But Jeff, let me pull your movie website back up again and pick up where you left off, because I want to make sure that people are aware of just how comprehensive your movie is, or series of movies, or docu-series, whatever you want to call it. This is kind of like the holy Bible of the crap that happened in 2020. So I think we were at chapter 3, the mail-in stuff.
In chapter 3, I show you how I found the mail-in votes in counties we were able to get the records, specific records for, called cast vote records. It shows that 80% of the counties across the country match the same pattern when you look at their mail-in votes. And the pattern is not, it violates something called the law of large numbers. I mean, the point is, they do not make any sense mathematically or in any other way. And they all fairly well match, and they're all predictive, meaning for instance, if you took Donald Trump's percentage of the mail-in votes halfway through, you could predict pretty well what the final would be, which of course that's not an election. That's not how things happen. So I believe in that. And in chapter 3 is I think the biggest nail in the coffin of people who say that there was no, there were no issues with the election, all that kind of stuff. Chapter 4, I go into the problems we have with our election night reporting. When you're watching your TV and you see the numbers appear and you're watching the numbers change during the night.
Big retailers don't want you to have this Zoom.
Oops, those numbers should not go down. When I'm counting, I don't know about you guys. When I'm counting, I like to go up. You know, I tend to like 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, if I have 2, I'll go 5. You know, maybe 6, 8. When you see numbers going down throughout the night on the Edison Research reporting, and Edison Research is the company that has a monopoly on providing the election night numbers to the networks. So every vote in America, every vote count goes through that night, goes through Edison Research in Edison, New Jersey. And the numbers in the swing states, mind you, in the swing states, in big important counties in the swing states, the numbers are all over the board. They go up, they go down. I give a lot of examples in there about how that works. The chapter after that, I deal with what I call digital danger. This gets into hacking of our election by external and internal foes. I talk about hammer and scorecard, for instance, which I think we're going to talk maybe a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And Dennis Montgomery, for those of you who know who he is. So I covered that, what I've seen and what I personally found in that chapter 5. Chapter 6, I kind of have a little fun and try to do some sleuthing work on who done it. I mean, we have this big crime that was committed. We had an election that was stolen. Who done it? And the answers are a lot of people. But I try to make sense of it in that chapter 6. And then chapter 7, I give real world advice of what we as voters can do to do as much to mitigate against the fraud as possible. So that in a nutshell is the movie.
That's a great summary, Jeff, and I really appreciate that. And we'll touch on one thing really quick before we open up this discussion. So Dennis Montgomery is the former CIA contractor who wrote a piece of software called Hammer and Scorecard. It's well known, and guys like Jeff MD used it to steal elections in other countries.
I have never stolen an election in another country or this country.
Well, I didn't say you stole the election in America, of course, but you know,
I did not have relations with that woman.
Did not have relations with that electorate.
So you just dated all of us here. John's going, what on earth are you guys talking about? That's John, you would have been a youngin back then, but that was Bill Clinton.
Oh, I know. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I did, in fact, have an inappropriate relationship.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I did inhale too, by the way.
Well, I'm the token senior citizen here, so I can speak to things like that. Right? We're on way back.
So let me just pull up. Let me back up. So Dennis Montgomery, CIA contractor, wrote the Hammer and Scorecard software. It's been used around the world surreptitiously to alter the outcomes of elections. Jeff works closely with Dennis. Dennis is a very, very smart guy. Like off the chain smart. And I will let Jeff speak to his work with Dennis Montgomery as we go through this episode, because I'm not an expert on his career, but I know enough that he's an extremely high level individual when it comes to writing this type of software. But I want to pull up one more article I think it's from 2023, if memory serves me right. And I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but essentially this article here details how there was election fraud in at least 30 states, more than 2,000 counties, so approximately 2/3. And the one consistent thing that each of these precincts had was that the voting was done by Dominion voting systems, and the software was Smartmatic vote counting system. And you can find this article by doing a quick search. I don't know if you can find it on Google, because of course everything you get on Google is curated to suit their narrative, but you can certainly find it quite easily on DuckDuckGo or Yandex or Brave Search. So Jeff MD, I'm going to go to you here. I mean, you're an engineer by trade. You're a numbers guy. Pick up where Jeff O'Donnell left off as far as the mathematical possibilities of 2020 even happening and being legitimate.
Well, I mean, when I was watching the election returns come in that night, and you saw, the line do this, for Biden. That is statistically incredibly unlikely. If you got a tranche of 300,000 votes, even if they are from a Democrat stronghold, they are not all going to be for Biden. It's just not going to happen. Just like if you took 300,000 votes from frickin' Florida, they're not going to all be for Trump. Yeah. The country is not that polarized, but that's exactly what happened. When we were watching it, my wife and I are going, "Oh, holy shit, they're stealing this election," because it happened in Pennsylvania, it happened in it happened in Detroit, in Michigan, it happened in Wisconsin, and to a certain extent, it also happened down in Georgia.
Let me just give you some stuff here. Right? So I'm from Illinois, right? I just pulled up election results 2020. So let's see what a Democrat stronghold. There's not probably a bigger Democrat stronghold than Chicago, right?
Right.
Cook County.
So let's look. Let me look here. 24% Trump in Cook County.
Yeah.
Okay. DuPage County, right next to it, 39%. Will County, 44%. Those are all Chicagoland suburb. Kendall County, 46%. It is practically impossible for 300,000 votes to be 100% for one candidate, even in a stronghold. You'd find the opposite in Republican strongholds. They're still going to win 25 to 40% of the vote.
Yeah, 85% is statistically doesn't happen. And you also have places where you had over 100% voter turnout. That happened in Milwaukee. There were districts in Milwaukee that had 103% voter turnout. Not only is that statistically improbable, it's mathematically impossible.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
John, let me tell you something else that you probably didn't know. Every single one of your voting machines that night was online.
What? I was reliably told that they weren't.
No, they were. I actually have a file that shows all of the modem manufacturers, the modem names, the IP addresses they were using, and what they were talking to, and how they were talking to them. But yeah, they were online that night.
Next thing I know, you're going to be telling me that COVID was leaked out of a lab in China and Santa Claus isn't real.
Yeah,
how about would you buy Fort Detrick?
Look, you guys,
lovely oceanfront property in Kansas.
I'm shocked that there's gambling going on here. Yeah, I feel like this is a scene from Casablanca.
Right. So there's a video that I want to play. It's almost 2 minutes long. I'm going to let the whole video play and then come to you, Jeff O'Donnell, to critique how accurate it is. It's on how easy it is for supervisors at various precincts to change votes, those sort of things. And I can't speak to the veracity of that, but I know that you can. So let's have a quick watch of this.
And I think I want to vote for Jason Shaw. They didn't vote that ballot a while ago. There wasn't nothing there. I think we need to vote for him. And I'm going to complete it. Confirm ballot, save, move to next ballot. Okay. So it pulls up the next ballot that needs to be adjudicated.
So you made a vote for someone where someone did not vote.
I did, didn't I?
And you're the election supervisor?
I'm the election supervisor. I am the person that sits and does the adjudication. Yes, sir.
Go back to the Trump and Biden race and decide, since both are marked, you just count one of them and not count the other. Can you decide?
Let's see. Yep, sure can. I think I want to vote for Biden. Let's let Biden win this one.
So what you put supersedes whatever.
But I decided this Al, he don't deserve no votes. Let's not let nobody vote for that. And complete. Okay. Well, here's another one. I don't think any votes need to vote on this ballot. I think this really needs to be just a blank ballot. Complete.
Well, Christy, can you scan a ballot more than once?
I've just done it.
I'm talking about you just. You just keep scanning. If you want.
I just kept scanning that
Something you
same.
like, you just keep sending.
I just scanned the same batches that y'all just voted. I never got any more until that one.
I don't know why they approve such a system. Don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jeff O'Donnell, is that video an accurate representation of how this software functions?
It is somewhat. If I saw it correctly, it appears to be the adjudication software for the Dominion system.
Okay.
And so the answer, if you're asking me, can people in the election office change votes? Yes, absolutely they can. Now, we are supposed to not have anybody do things like that alone. In other words, there's always supposed to be, for instance, the adjudication. The people, there are ballots that get kicked out because the computer can't determine what ovals are all filled in. Or there might be a write-in candidate or something. Obviously, a person has to look at that. So it gets what we call kicked out to, I call it manual adjudication, human adjudication, whatever. So then you have, in most places across the country, a team that has been chosen by different parties, 2 people, who will look at that and decide amongst themselves, this is who they meant to vote for. Okay. If done that way, the system should be, as far as what's going on election day with adjudicated ballots and that, it should be safe. I mean, one of the things is a rogue person. I think anybody on this panel knows, no matter what you're talking about, a rogue actor can do pretty much anything that they want to do. So the question, if the question is that possible? Yes, that's possible. Do we have safeguards that are supposed to prevent it? Yes. If it's being broken down, then it's also a problem with our observers and watchers that are not noticing that there is somebody doing something alone that they're not supposed to be doing alone. So I mean, the computers, the election computers, can actually change the votes on the images. That has been shown, and that, I think, is a very scary thing. So in other words, actually, the computers do not read the votes off of your paper ballot. They take a picture of the ballot inside an image, like your camera does on your phone, and then gets passed to another piece of software that looks at that image, and based on where the dark spots are in that image, what ovals matched up and how it was supposed to go. If you imagine you as a person doing this just yourself, if you copied and pasted an empty oval with a full oval, up and down, it would look like the person voted for the other person. That can be done inside the computer in milliseconds, and that is a definite concern as well. I don't want to scare people too badly, of course, but these are people need to know, because these election machines have to go. They simply have to go. And unfortunately, they're still here for this election, and we're doing what we can to mitigate. Will there be fraud? Yes. Can we beat it? Yes. If we are very, very careful and we vote in droves on election day. Yes, absolutely. But what you're given here are excellent reasons why we need to go back to hand paper ballots, hand counted by a person. You shouldn't need anything more complicated than a calculator to do an election. And I'm not talking about one of those high-end graphing calculators either. I want one of the ones you get from the dollar store, one of those calculators. That's unless it's from China. I don't know, maybe not, but the point remains. There is nothing secure about anything in our elections. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Well, a quick comment. Somebody recently made a point that every single banking transaction in the country is manually verified every single day by the end of the day by all of the banks in America. And if we can do that, there's no excuse for not doing paper ballots and manually counting them. I'm going to pull up a statement recently made by Dominion. I want to say probably in the past few days, if memory serves me right. And then I'm going to go to everybody on the panel and get your input. And then I'll end that section with you again, Jeff O'Donnell. So here we go. So this is a person commenting on the post made by Dominion Voting on X. So Dominion is closely monitoring claims around the November 2024 election and strongly encourages use of verified credible sources of info. We remain fully prepared to defend our company and our customers against lies and those who spread them. Get the facts. So this Shadow of Ezra replies that Dominion voting system has issued a threatening tweet warning Americans to stay silent with regards to their alleged election fraud practices. The company claims they are monitoring individuals and are ready to take legal action against those who speak out. Will you stay silent? So probably the biggest case is they sued Fox News, and Fox settled out of court with them for hundreds of millions of dollars after 2020. So I want to be careful on what we say with regards to Dominion, because I have less than zero desire to get involved in a lawsuit with them. But it seems to me that there's enough evidence out there that for whatever reason, the courts have not been willing to consider the full weight of it. And they kind of want to sweep this stuff under the carpet. So Jeff MD, my question is to you. There's a ton of evidence now that 2020 was fraudulently conducted. The results were fraudulent. Okay. So whether we allege it was Dominion or something else, because there's just one story after another, many of which don't even involve Dominion. Thoughts on a contractor who's playing a big role in our elections, threatening people, say, don't you dare question our product or we'll see you in court?
Well, it's almost my opinion, Dominion, my opinion, that it would be like the drug cartel saying, how dare you accuse us of selling fentanyl in the United States? And if you say that again, we're going to poison your fentanyl. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And people can express unease with electronic voting systems. That is not against the law. That's the First Amendment. Now, if you're going to accuse them specifically of, cheating or whatever, you better have evidence. But you can express your discomfort and you can express your unease. And I do. I mean, I'm an engineer. I know how computers work. I know how Intel works and covert actions. I know how they work. And the best way to avoid that is paper ballots counted by human beings, and where the ballots are retained. So when you need to do a recount, you still have them. Anything with electrons can be hacked. And anyone who tells you otherwise is an idiot. And if they say, oh, they're air gapped. You know what else was air gapped? The Iranian nuclear centrifuge program. Guess what? The Israelis hacked it. It was called Stuxnet. Okay. If there is a will, there is a way. And anyone who says these voting machines are 100% absolutely secure is either delusional or lying through their frickin' teeth.
Yeah. So before I go to John, just speaking from a systems engineer standpoint and network engineer, because, before I went into business development, I had all those certifications with Sun Microsystems, Red Hat, Linux, IBM, etc. Software is written by humans. Humans are fallible. There is no such thing as 100% secure, perfect software. It'll always be a case of playing whack-a-mole. The black hats will always find a way to find some way to compromise some system. And then the white hats like Jeff O'Donnell come behind and put measures in place to stop that and mitigate it from happening again. But again, it's like playing whack-a-mole. So John, then S2, and then Jeff for comments on this. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, as you said, white hats are at a disadvantage because they're reactive. They're on defense. They're defending against these nefarious forces coming in to infiltrate these networks. Yeah, and if something is connected to the web, if something has it has the ability to be connected to the web, it is 100% hackable. I don't care what it is. No security measure you can put in that's going to actually negate that. And I'm not a software engineer. I'm a manufacturing engineer, mechanical engineer. So with some electronics background, but I'm not a computer guy, even though I'm fairly decent with computers. But understanding that they're trying to tell us that something is secure that's impossible to secure. And that's the narrative, because they don't want us to know just how vulnerable this stuff is, how easily it can be hacked, how easily it can be shifted and changed around. Because if we knew that, if the general public knew that, they would be a little bit more concerned with the security of our elections, I think.
So I'm going to go to S2 next, then Jeff O'Donnell, but I don't know if S2 can answer this. I'm pretty sure Jeff can. Is my understanding is in some jurisdictions, none of these voting machines are supposed to be connected to the internet. And
in all jurisdictions, they're not supposed to be connected.
All jurisdictions? Okay, go ahead, S2. Then roll with your thoughts on Dominion here, saying that they essentially have an impenetrable, infallible software system for deciding elections.
So I've been working with Jeff O'Donnell for approximately 4 years now. We've been sharing data back and forth.
God bless you, Jeff O'Donnell. You're a good man.
Thank you.
But we've been working together and trading data back and forth for the last 4 years. And the problem with election fraud is not the lack of evidence. The problem is lack of prosecution. It's the same question that Jeff and me and a bunch of other people that we're associated with keep asking, is when we find these people, why are they not prosecuted? And it goes back to the same old thing. If we go back and we follow the money, I just posted something in our Signal Insider chat in there that's really going to draw a line that will show you where the money is coming from for all of this. And my thoughts on I call them dumb onion. Jeff and I both have examined all of the emails that Sheriff Darleaf released, and we went through them with a fine-tooth comb, and we found evidence in those emails where they did actually commit some pretty heinous acts of things, where they actually admitted it. And for them to come out and threaten the American people to not exercise their First Amendment and say, hey, you know what, something isn't right here, this needs to be investigated. Well, let's just put it this way. I believe that the Dumb Onion CEOs were just recently indicted for trying to bribe a government in the Philippines, I believe it is.
Wow.
So for them to come out and say that tells me that they're actually on the defensive. And I'm going to disagree with something John said. White hats are not always reactive. We have been very proactive. We've been very proactive this go around to be able to get eyes on things. We have systems in place now where we can see every single connection coming in and out of the United States to these election systems. I have another file that shows every single connection that was made to these election systems back in 2020 going in and out of this country. There were multiple vectors they used to subvert this election and effect a coup. Multiple vectors, not one. So they had the human aspect of it. They had the computer aspect of it. They had the ballot aspect of it. I made mention of that last night, where they would go up and they would have these ballots printed for specific counties, and then they would do ballot overruns on them. So they could take those. And then they also used the United States postal system as well. So the whole, pardon my French, the whole fucking system is rotten. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah,
it is. Before I go to Jeff O'Donnell, I want to pick up on John's comment. Is the being reactive is with regards to exploits. White hats will always be reactive to black hat exploits. Okay,
I should have contextualized myself a little bit better. My apologies. So
no, I caught what you were saying, John. I just wanted to make it crystal clear to our audience that when an exploit is found, we react to it. The good guys react to it, hopefully before too much damage is done. And that's not to say that there aren't really cool things going on where we're doing deep packet inspection and we're trying to, set measures in place that take automatic responses. But really, at the end of the day, if there's an exploit that's been found in a piece of software, we will be reactive to it. It's just the nature of the cat and mouse whack-a-mole game. John, go ahead before Jeff.
Yeah. So, I was trying to find the article while you guys were talking, because didn't this CrowdStrike outage from like July affect some of the Dominion voting machines? I remember this vividly because everybody's like, wait, they're connected to the internet. Wow, this is crazy. Newsflash. Like the CrowdStrike, the huge outage that happened, it affected me personally with my cell phone, or not my cell phone, my work computer. And couldn't do anything that morning when it was all out. And I remember reading articles that there were Dominion voting machines that went. I think it was The Hill that published it. But
recall
yeah,
what
in
Chris
Arizona.
recall what Chris said about a week ago about countermeasures.
Yeah.
What did I say a week ago with regards to countermeasures? Remember, I'm a senior citizen now. I have a hard time remembering 24 hours ago.
There are surreptitious countermeasures in place that have already been deployed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, true.
Well,
So we can't really go too deep down that rabbit hole. But Jeff O'Donnell, I want to get you to weigh in on this next, as far as Dominion trying to, you know, trounce our First Amendment rights. Number one. Number two, I have a recollection of, like John, that there was something that happened with CrowdStrike, which took down a bunch of systems, and I think some of those systems were Dominion. I think you're right.
So much fun. First of all, to be accurate, it was Smartmatic that had two of their people. Just so you don't get dinged for that. My research shows that the fraud went throughout. Dumb Onion, as he says, Smartmatic,
ES&S.
Clear Ballot, Heart. It goes across the board. The threat of lawfare is real because it has worked, and these people were fighting. Sometimes, I mean, if I may, Dennis Montgomery should be a prize government whistleblower, because he has evidence that the government was spying domestically to a degree no one can even imagine. However, instead of be accepting as a whistleblower, he's being lawfared into oblivion if they can get their way. And who's going to run out of who's going to run out of money first? Any of us or the government? I think that's and when you've got Dominion with the governments in their pocket, I mean, whatever the reason, I'm not even going to go into intent there, but the government is carrying the water, from federal governments down to counties and everything are carrying the water for these election systems. And it makes it a very difficult road to try to go down if they cast, if the eye of Sauron, I'm a nerd, casts upon you, you're going to have a really rough time, no matter how much truth you have on your side.
Well said.
I would love to see Smartmatic and Dominion software in their systems. Somebody take it to Black Hat and say $1 million for whoever can break in. That you'd have to be writing that check in about 15 minutes.
So I want to mention the fact, I don't know Smartmatic, but I know for a fact that Dominion is a Canadian software company. They're not an American company. And this seems to me something so critical for essentially awarding the leadership of our republic should be an American-based company, 100%, because what's to stop Dominion from saying, well, we're in Canada and you can't touch us?
The code's written in Serbia.
There you go. I just want to be clear. I have nothing against Canadians or Serbians or anything like that, but
I have a lot against the bad ones.
The bad,
we have that proof. We have that proof from their emails. They admitted it.
Yeah, I'm not against. Yeah, we do. I know I've seen that. What I'm getting at though is that if they are not American companies, we don't have the ability to literally choke them if and when they do break the law to the same extent as if they were American as opposed to foreign. And I don't believe that they're loyal to our republic, period. That's all there is to that. And so this comes back to Jeff O'Donnell. The rest of the guys have heard me say this. I started on this bandwagon a month ago. I believe that our government is under the direct control of our enemies. There is no other way to explain them constantly putting Americans last. I can't square it any other way. How do you square that? Hey, we've just sent $171 million today to Lebanon, and then the next day, imagine that we found another 80 million that we sent to them. But if you live in North Carolina and you got smoked by Helene, we'll give you $750. I mean, I could sit here and talk for hours and hours and hours on America last, and I don't know how else to explain this. I mean, do you want to weigh in on that, Jeff O'Donnell, before I move to the next point?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to hear a longer explanation, check the Fingerprints of Fraud, themovie.com. That's exactly what you're talking about who is at the top of the food chain. And you are correct. But yeah, we are definitely prioritizing the rest of the world over our individual citizens. That's $750. A lot of people have to pay that back, which is
and that's if you can get approved.
It's just if you can get approved. But yeah, I just leave it at that. You're absolutely correct. What could we do? A pittance of the money we have sent to Ukraine could fix our election system here in the United States to be the most stellar system, unbreakable, unhackable, because it would be paper ballots. A small fraction of that is all it would take. But no, we're going to give it to to corrupt individuals in other countries. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't have this in the brief either. I've said this before in Survival Dispatch News, but I want to throw it out there for everybody to comment on. So my personal opinion is that the powers that be, the globalists, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, are starting to get a sense that this election is probably going to be too big to rig. They would have to have over 100% voter turnout in most precincts to actually win this, which means they may have to, basically admit that, okay, Donald Trump won. He got the most electoral college votes. But my opinion is that between now and January the 6th, they will continue to try and assassinate him. And if they can't assassinate him, they're going to incarcerate him and potentially Epstein him. But if they don't Epstein him, they'll disqualify him vis-a-vis the 14th Amendment, no matter how dubious that may be, because that's not what its original intention was. And if that doesn't work, I believe on January the 6th that they will not certify the election results for Donald Trump. They will use the new DOD Directive 5240.01 to deploy the military across the country. And the other piece I would add to that is it's highly probable that somewhere in this timeline there is a false flag that's also used, or maybe is the reason that's used to deploy the military domestically and essentially institute martial law until they get their way, suspend the election, suspend the transfer of power, whatever the case may be. So I'll go to Jeff MD. I'm just going to keep going counterclockwise on my screen here so everybody has an equal opportunity to speak. Jeff MD, your thoughts on those scenarios, those hypothetical scenarios?
Yeah, it's ironic that the people who are screaming threat to democracy are the ones talking about threatening our democracy. I mean, not certifying and putting, we can't elect Trump because he'll go after all of his opponents legally. We're like, oh, like you've been doing for the last 4 years. The whole thing of, we're not going to certify the election even if Trump wins. Okay, well, how is that a democracy? How is that anything democratic? I think what we need to do is you almost need to do, India is the largest democracy on the planet. They have 1.3 billion people. They know who won their elections the night of election night. Okay, half that country is illiterate, and they can do it better than we can. How in the hell is that not a national embarrassment for us? My God, I was in Afghanistan when they had their first elections back in 2002. It was run more efficiently than ours are. But yeah, they're going to look for any excuse on the planet to not allow him to be seated. And they are going to start the civil war that they are so desperately trying to start in the process.
I don't disagree. John, your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot to be gained in the fog of war or the fog of elections. And because they muck all of this stuff up so well, some of that mucking it up is by design. You can get away with a lot of stuff in confusion. Get away with a lot of things when you have multiple different ways of how you're counting ballots, how you're collecting ballots, how people are voting. Without uniformity, you don't know where to spot the abnormalities. And that's really the problem, is we have so many different systems in so many different places that it allows for nefarious people to take advantage of that. let's keep in mind, guys, the last two elections have not been decided by that many votes overall. 70,000, I think, in 70-some thousand in 2016, and like 40,000 in 2020. These are numbers that just a little bit of cheating can get you the win, So now, let me preface that as saying I think that there was a lot of cheating. I don't think 2020 was actually close. And I think that as we get further and further away from that, we're starting to see that. I think we're entering a place now where this current election is getting close to being too big to rig in a lot of ways, in my opinion. I could be completely wrong about that. It's just what I'm seeing, the way the media is shifting, the way all the narratives are shifting, and I think that they're kind of in the boat where the cheating is going to have to be on a monumental scale for them to win this election, I think.
Unbelievable. Yeah. An unbelievable level, which would kind of out them from their.
It would be such a level that 2020, they did a lot of things. They had to kind of show their cards a little bit. I think they would just have to. I think that would be so obvious for them to do enough to win here that that it's going to get into the norm water table in order for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, agreed. S2, your thoughts on these hypothetical situations unfolding?
Well, there's been some theories that have been put forth about the military being used on the American people. And I think more, if you really look at what that document is saying in comparison to the 5241 manual, the directive and the manual have completely different language in them. And what I believe it means actually is that they are going to be allowed to increase their ability to perform surveillance on the American people, not necessarily open fire on them. And as Mike Sterling stated last night, the majority of the military are going to be more leaning to the right than they are the left. And they're also going to have to take into consideration the Uniform Military Code of Justice and their ability to say, this is an unlawful order, I will not do this. And, as for the voting machines, I believe it was the Democrats 12 years ago that were bitching about the machines. And they were the ones saying that these machines are not safe and all of this. I mean, even Pocahontas said it. So, it's just kind of interesting to hear all of the hypocrisy that's been the norm over the last 8 years. And I'm just, for some reason, we talk about the peaceful protests and things that happened back in 2020. They had a big lead up to that. And it was kind of like a pot boiling where they were simmering it already. They had it already going in the background. And I and a bunch of other people that are in the Intel community, we're not seeing that pot boiling right now. There's a lot of disaffectedness going on within those organizations that had created those situations, and they just don't have the backing that they had before, and they just don't have the will anymore. So I don't think we're going to see that in that way of a false flag. However, where we talk about the illegals coming across the border, the amount of terrorists that we have in the country right now, I believe they could absolutely use that. And that could be your false flag there. But I just some of these things I just don't see falling into place inside the puzzle. The cheating, yeah, absolutely. We're definitely going to see that. We're already seeing it in the way of lawfare, where the DOJ is trying to stop states from removing illegals from their voter rolls. They're saying it's voter suppression. They're not allowed to vote in our country in the first place. How are you suppressing a vote? This is the frustrating part of it. It's all common sense, and everybody's listening to the news. The best thing that anybody can do is to stop watching the freaking news on election night. And if you're going to watch anything, watch the Edison feed and see what it does and record it, and take that into your local judge and say, voting numbers of votes don't go down; they only go up. Does this make any sense to you? Are you getting it yet?
Yeah, good, valid comments. S2. Go ahead, Jeff.
just real quick, you've got Virginia where the Department of Justice is suing Virginia to keep it from cleaning out illegals from its voter rolls, saying it's too close to the election. It's like the law has been on the books for 20 years. This is not new, but they act like they just started doing it yesterday.
They're suing Texas too, and they've hamstrung Ken Paxton for being able to investigate it and or prosecute it.
Yeah, then we're getting the same kind of crap going on here in Arizona too.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
So I want to get to Jeff O'Donnell, but since you mentioned it, Jeff MD, with regards to the DOJ suing Virginia, we're going to play this short video, but I also want to add a comment just so everybody's clear on this. The federal government does not play a role in elections. They are 100% the domain of states. So Merrick Garland is a whole other subject unto himself, but he's a corrupt person with a corrupt team behind him. So let's hear what the governor has to say from Virginia, and then Jeff O'Donnell will come right back to you with all these hypotheticals.
That bill was signed in 2006, and it requires us to use DMV data where people self-identify as non-citizens to then go through a process of removing them from the voter rolls if they're on the voter rolls. And guess what? That's exactly what we've been doing. It's been happening for 18 years. Democrat governors, even Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam, use this process all the way up through into October. And that's exactly what we're doing in Virginia today. Is someone walks into the DMV, they identify themselves as a non-citizen, somehow or another, either by accident or by purpose, they register to vote. They're on the voter roll. We go through a process of notifying the registrar that they need to be told that if they cannot affirm their citizenship in 14 days, they're taken off the voter roll. And this is the process that the Department of Justice, 25 days before a presidential election, turns around and says, you must stop doing this. And that is unbelievable to me. I mean, here I am, a governor, mandated, and oh, by the way, proud to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and by law to make sure that we have clean voter rolls. And the Department of Justice shows up 25 days before a presidential election and says, stop doing that. To me, this is unprecedented. And I think it represents a Department of Justice that is trying to achieve something other than fair and free elections. And I have to say, my job as governor is to make sure that the election in Virginia will be fair, will be accurate, and will be safe. And that's exactly what I am doing, and I will continue to do it because the Department of Justice is wrong here.
Yes, they are. So, Jeff O'Donnell, just want to make one quick comment from S2 stuff so that our audience understands. The Posse Comitatus Act forbids the U.S. Army and Air Force from being deployed against American citizens on American soil. There's another act that applies to the Navy and the Marine Corps. However, not only do we have the DoD Directive 5240.01 now, which says that they can use lethal force against Americans on American soil, the Insurrection Act itself specifically mentions the Posse Comitatus Act and says we supersede that. So there's some scary potential moves that have some foundation in legal because of these, or golly, tongue twister legislation that could potentially unfold. So Jeff O'Donnell, your thoughts on what may unfold for hypotheticals between now and January the 6th? And
maybe they could get the Capitol Police to do it. They don't seem to have a problem shooting unarmed Americans. Oh, I didn't want to give them that idea. Forget it. Can we get that? Can we edit that out? Anyway, my big.
Well, yeah, we have to be there for that to happen anyway. So
who knows? One of my concerns is that the CrowdStrike thing that you guys mentioned, where a ton, I think it might have been a majority of Windows computer systems and others were brought to their knees because of supposedly a bad patch from a third-party vendor, which was CrowdStrike. What if that was a test? Okay, we can do it. And what if that is their equivalent of kicking over the chessboard on election day? I've been trying to raise the alarm about this possibility, and I've been having people reach out to the counties to have a plan in place if their computers are not available on election day. Have enough paper ballots in stock, have enough people on call that are trained to count so that we still do this election even without the computers. I think that is a critical thing because I would not put it past them trying to do that. Somebody mentioned, the pipes bursting in Fulton County. I saw on the chat, or the supposed pipes bursting. Chapter 7 of my movie, fingerprintsofraud.com, actually, or the movie.com, actually gives a little skit about how our observers and our watchers should be acting in that case. And that is simply, if you're being asked to do something or not to do something, or not to look at something that you're allowed to look at, do not comply. Make them call the sheriff. I'm sure the sheriff will be really happy to come in and try to do something about that. If they say the building's on fire, say, fine, I will be the last one out of the building. Okay, I will take that. I will be the last one out of the building. Everyone else has to go first. So these obviously are things to worry about. I think that on the 6th or 7th or whenever they name Trump the winner of this, all of a sudden you're going to have a whole bunch of Democrats who are going to remember that they don't like voting machines and they think that there's fraud. They've forgotten all that. They're suddenly going to remember that. They're going to start banging the drums. They're going to have Black Lives Matter, and they're going to have Antifa starting to burn down the usual suspect cities to try to get a culture of fear in America, to the point where they can get some of the limp-wristed politicians to be, well, maybe it would be better for everyone if we just made Trump ineligible or something like that. That I think is something to consider. I don't know specifically how to prepare for that, other than to be, forewarned is forearmed. And everything, whenever I find something, I try to go public with it immediately, and I go as wide as I can, because everything that they know that we know eliminates maybe their ability to quite so freely do it anymore. And I think that there's been a lot of that going on. Some of the stuff that and I'm not the only one, by the way. I've got all this stuff in the movie. This is just the stuff I found. There are people out there who have found other ways. And anybody who says there's only one way of election fraud is a little misguided. People say it's the machines. Yes. It's the absentee ballots. Yes. It's the registration rules. Yes. It's an evil smorgasbord of options for whatever works best in that particular county, whatever works best in that particular state. So, we got to really have our heads on a swivel, people, because if we're not careful, as I think it was Jeff pointed out, they want a civil war for whatever reasons they have. They want that, and I don't know how we're going to prevent it if they take certain steps.
I agree. So, Jeff O'Donnell, I want to add that on Sundays, I send out a casting call, blind copy. I don't expose anybody's information, but a casting call for the coming weeks, episodes of Survival Dispatch News. So if you don't mind, I'd like to add you to that, because one of the things that casting call specifically requests is that if you have something you want to get in front of a larger audience, just reply back to the email and we'll get you scheduled on one of our episodes. I mean, it's 7 days a week at Survival Dispatch News. Plus we have other shows on other platforms as well. So if you're cool with that, Jeff O'Donnell, I'd like to add you to that. And I want to make a general comment before I go to the next piece here. And I've seen a lot of comments recently from people slinging, insults towards our panels and Survival Dispatch, saying, "Oh, you're stupid. You still believe in the Democrats and Republicans." No, we don't. Number one, I've been saying the Republicans and Democrats are two sides of the same coin for over 30 years. Number two, all of us that you see on Survival Dispatch, the one thing that we all have in common is that we are constitutional libertarians, lowercase l. We are not Democrats, Republicans, or anything of the sort. So you can call us MAGA if you want. I don't care what you call us, but don't think that we're stupid and that we don't see that the Democrats and Republicans are on the same team. We absolutely see it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. So moving along to the next piece of this disinformation war, for lack of a better term, there is a group now that has been getting quite a bit of traction on X that is basically Democrat-led fact checkers that are going and leaving community notes on posts across X that they disagree with. And this is part of the information war happening right here. So, number one, I wanted to mention it so that our audience is aware of this. Number two, there is an alternative called Based Community Notes that just started today. They're trying to recruit people so that if you see some bullshit from these Democrat-led fact checkers leaving community notes that are false, that you can appeal it, send in a support ticket to X, and have something done with that. So where I want to go with this in the conversation next, and back to you, Jeff MD, in the top corner there, is this info wars that we've been in for quite a period of time. Like S2 is very fond of saying, we're already in World War III. World War III started with all the disinformation, misinformation, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to say one thing here, and then I'm going to let you all take it away. I am in the process of putting together an episode of Survival Dispatch News with Todd Callender with a list of laws that we believe need to be passed to save the Republic. And one of those laws is truth in broadcasting. If you knowingly broadcast bullshit, you lose your license to broadcast, no matter whether it's radio, TV, or anything else. So, Jeff MD, your thoughts on InfoWars / World War III that we're currently in?
Well, it's funny when they kidnapped again this Democrat fact checking system that they're going to do on X. My first instinct was, isn't that called Snopes? I mean, they already have that. But what I think it shows is that people have lost so much faith in fact checking that people are going to, more people get their information from X than probably from any other source on the planet, because it's unfiltered. And when somebody does put up just obvious bullshit, they get community noted to death. I remember the one that I always thought was the funniest. Somebody actually put a post up that said, Sydney Sweeney's breasts are not that big. And the community fact check was, yes, they are. It was that simple. But the fact that they're trying to organize this on X means that they recognize this is their weakness, is that you can fact check people on Politico. Who reads Politico? Just freaking diehard leftists anyway. You're preaching to the choir. They're trying to get to normal people who have given up on all the bullshit cable news and all these other ones, and they're just saying, I just want it from the horse's mouth. And so they're basically going to say, the horse is lying to you. Don't believe it. It's a sign of desperation on their part. But I love the fact that they need to counter it. But you never see community notes, or rarely have I seen community notes on sites like, Kamala Wins. And that's a completely bogus site, or Kamala headquarters. And they just put out total bullshit. They should be getting community noted into the stratosphere.
Agreed. Completely. John, InfoWars, World War III.
Well, I definitely think that World War III isn't going to be an information war. I'm not sure that I'm for 100% would say that we're in it. Well, maybe I would. Let me just backtrack real quick.
We are, trust me, man.
Yeah,
we are live. There's no rewind button.
Well, yeah, it's ever since, and I think that the precursors of this was what Obama did when he was in office. In a lot of ways, he set the stage for what we're dealing with now, with going after political opponents and doing all of this lawfare against various people. And then you had the wrecking ball of Donald Trump coming through. That was, they didn't, I still say they didn't foresee that coming. They did not foresee that election
Right.
And I meet these people on a daily basis. I work with these people. They're dumb. They have no common sense. They may have engineering degrees. They may have all of this other stuff, but they're dumb people because they can't see what's going on.
They're intellectually lazy. It's
Absolutely
easier to go along than actually think about something, look at something skeptically, and say, does this make sense? That requires work. And
I would refer to it as cognitive dissonance.
Yeah,
essentially. Yep. So S2, World War III, InfoWars. I know you've got lots to say.
I call it sack of hammers stupid. That's what I call it. Actually, that's an insult to hammers.
Right.
We've been in this war. This has been a world war. If we look at all of the events that have been going on around the world since 2020, and all of the things that have started to metastasize, there's no doubt that this has been a world war, because it's not just been happening here. The world is looking to us to correct this situation. And as John pointed out, the World Economic Forum, they advertised their plans for COVID before it ever came around. And then after they did their little tabletop test with that, then they turned around and ran another cyber polycrisis one. So they've been in our faces, basically laughing and telling us, we're going to do this to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, there may be nothing we can do about it, but there is certainly something we can do in response to it. And that is exactly what's been going on by fighting the lies and burying things. I use a technique oftentimes when I'm doing cyber battle in chat rooms and things like that, is I call it comment burying. Is I'll get my little meme warriors together, and there's about 20 of us out there, and I will say, okay, this is being said out here, bury the comment. If it's never seen, then it never happened. And nobody's going to go all the way back up to the top of the page to see what was said. So if anybody wants, I suggest that everybody wants to take part in this information war, you bury the lies and you tell the truth right after it. but you can get your own little armies together. This is something you can do, by the way. If you have an X account, you can get 20 of your friends together and you say, hey, I just saw this lie up here. And all of you monitor it. I mean, you don't have to do it 24/7 like I do, but you monitor what's being said out there, and then you get your little meme warriors together and you just go out there and create a bunch of memes and just bury the post. It's a very common tactic that's used. So, yeah, I've always been of the mind that the first rule of war is to know when you're in one. And I recognize that we were in one the day after the inauguration happened. And I saw that because when I saw what was happening and all of the green screen activities that were going on and the military turning their back on Biden, there was no doubt as to what was coming. And we're in it deep.
Yeah, well said, S2. Jeff O'Donnell, dying to hear your thoughts on the InfoWars that we're engaged in. I think you're on mute, Jeff.
Sorry about that. I want to go back to where we started with the community notes thing. I'm actually somebody who can rate and vote on community notes, which means I see the totally stupid things that the liberals try to put on everything. And I think that if you are an active X user, go through the process of applying to be a community note person. Apologize for the dogs in the background. To be a community note person, and because essentially, when people put these stupid things on community notes, you can ratio them out of existence because that's kind of how their algorithm works. You know, if they get 3 people who say, yeah, this is a good community note, and 10 people who say this is ridiculous, it's not going to make it. Most of the ones I see don't make it, and it's a very good thing that they don't, because they're just, the stupidity is so amazing.
Well, that goes back to my tactic of burying those things. You say they get ratioed out. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. I'll call out my little group. Well, my group of people I call Raccoon Army, who do that for me from time to time.
Raccoon Army, I love it.
I'm part of your army, so
you are indeed. You're indeed Lance Corporals, I recall.
I like raccoons.
No, I thought it was Sergeant.
Or Brigadier General. I can't remember. I don't keep all these things straight.
Oh, too funny. All right. So some of the comments that y'all made here recently actually play into the next X post that I want to share. So Mike Engelman, if you don't follow him, I recommend you do. He's pretty level-headed, but he's essentially saying the same thing that we've been saying for months now, that we're in this election cycle, and that's that these bullshit polls that they keep putting out saying it's a horse race, it's neck and neck, is essentially trying to sell the steal, so that those people who never question government, mainstream media, Hollywood actors, that group of people is being programmed to believe that this is a horse race. And holy cow, can you believe it? Kamala Harris and Tim Walz pulled it off. They're just selling the steal, essentially. And here's an interesting graph that's been going around today on X, where Trump is at 93.2% probability of winning the Electoral College vote. And that's from RCP. So Real Clear Politics aggregates a bunch of other companies' data and puts it together out like this. They're saying Harris is still ahead in the popular vote, but the Electoral College vote would go to Trump. And I don't disbelieve the Electoral College votes. I do disbelieve the popular vote, because the numbers that I've been seeing, it's not even close. You're talking Trump being up anywhere from 25 to 35 points on some of the polls that I've seen, the real polls. And here's what I mean by the real polls. And then I'm going to go to Jeff MD for your to get the ball rolling on our discussion on selling the steal. When I say these bullshit polls, if you read the fine print, if you click through to the end for how they conducted these polls, you'll see oversampling on the Democrat side, sometimes to such a large margin that's like, well, why even do the poll? You know, it'll say something along the lines of 60% of the respondents were registered Democrats and 30% were registered Republicans and 10% were independents. And I'm just choosing arbitrary numbers, but you got to dig a little bit deeper and not just take things on the surface. And I hate to bemoan this, but I want to say in the 70s and 80s, we transitioned from teaching students critical thinking to memorizing and regurgitating crap. So the Democrats have really latched onto that in particular, because as long as they can get one headline, it doesn't matter what comes after that, right? Christopher Wray said Donald Trump wasn't shot. It was either glass from a teleprompter or from a steel railing. And then while he's in front of Congress, and then 48 hours later, the FBI releases a letter and says, Christopher Wray spoke out of turn. It was a bullet, but that never makes the headlines. So the minions, though, they now have this headline, Donald Trump wasn't shot, and they run with it. So Jeff selling the steel, Jeff MD.
Well, you hit on, one, there's the oversampling of Democrats. They still think this is 1944 and FDR is the president. And so, yeah, the polls are always off because they always oversample Democrats and undersample Republicans, or should say undersample conservatives. And it's almost not even laughable. It's you've got Trump, you've got people lined up hours in advance to get into a venue that'll hold 60,000 people, and they pack it. And then you got Kamala Harris, who couldn't fill out a foursome on the golf course if she agreed to pay everybody's greens fees. And they're trying to say, they're in a dead heat. And they did the same thing with Joe Biden. Joe Biden, nobody went to his, he never even held any rallies, but he got 81 million votes. He got more votes than Obama. I'm not an Obama guy. I don't like him, but there was some genuine popularity there. There were people who genuinely liked the guy. And nowadays, you go on X and you see black male after black male coming out saying, Obama doesn't speak for me. I'm not voting for Kamala Harris. Not for me. And they don't know what to do with that, because they've had the black vote sewn up, or at least they tell everybody they have, for so long that it goes against their narrative and they don't know how to adjust to it. But they do have to make it look close enough so that it's within the realm of possibility that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz actually got someone to vote for.
Exactly.
And because if they went into the thing saying, hey, guess what, Kamala, you're down 10% in popular vote nationwide, no one's going to believe that they're off that much. There's just no way. And then have her come back and win? No. So they got to make it look close.
Yeah, exactly. It can't happen. I just want to, before you go, I want to point out that nobody voted for Kamala Harris to be the Democrat, ticket, right? And when she did run in 2020 in the primary back then, I think she accrued 1% of the vote until she reached the point in time where she dropped out of the primary race. She's very disliked. After the disaster on Fox last week, there are people inside her campaign that said she just went off the rocker, cussing people out and insulting them. She's reportedly a pretty wicked lady when she steps away from the camera. So she's a cackling fool on camera, and then when she steps off of it, she's 100% witch. John, your thoughts here on these guys selling the steel?
Well, it's always about the narrative when it comes to the media. Everything's a narrative. And like you said earlier, the rush to get the narrative so that you have control, because then everything else is counter. It's what I was talking about earlier. It's defensive. You have to kind of defend that. And when you're playing defense, you always tend to look like, you're on your heels a little bit, unless you're JD Vance with Tim Walz. But I think that I really think that a lot of this has ran its course in a lot of ways. I think they were trying to do this until about 2 weeks ago. And the reason I say that is there's no way she goes on Fox News if she's winning and if they think they can sell this thing, because they knew Brett Baer is not the most right-wing guy. I mean, I think he's kind of probably middle right-leaning. He's a pretty vanilla anchor, and it looked like an absolute beatdown, and he's just asking her simple questions. And there's no way she does that interview There's no way she does that interview if they are ahead and they think they can sell this thing and they think they can coast the rest of the way out. I firmly believe that. I may be surprised. Maybe they can pull a rabbit out of the hat at the last minute to put the cheating over the top. But I don't. I think that they realize this. And I think that what's going on in the media right now is a CYA activity. They have to move a little bit more towards what's actually going to happen. And I think you're going to see more of this in the polling that's going to come out in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. I think those last lines of polls are going to be much more favorable to Trump. And then it'll be like, well, we just saw the shift at the last minute. I think that this really comes down to, yeah, they're going to still cheat. They're still going to try and cheat and see if they can somehow finagle their way around something. I think what is going to be more dangerous and more of what we should be paying attention to is the things that they're going to do after the election.
Yes.
At 2-3 months before Trump would take power, you guys better have some food on hand. You guys better have some water on hand. And I'm not joking about that. 100%. You guys better be prepared. They'll shut things down. They've done it before for less reasons.
Yep. COVID.
Yep. They're going to do what they can do as long as they have power. They're going to try and kill him again. No doubt in my mind. Multiple times.
Well, if the American public is worried about their lights being on, their homes being heated, food on their table, because the economy goes in the crapper, they're going to be paying less attention to what the Democrats are doing politically. And if you don't have power, you don't have radio, TV, or internet. Not everybody has standalone power and Starlink. So they can get away with stuff and people just won't hear about it.
True. So S2, just a quick comment before I get your input. There's another hypothetical situation that I forgot to mention earlier. It's entirely possible that they let the election unfold. There's a tsunami of votes for Donald Trump. And then immediately after that, the globalists, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, says there was absolutely election cheating and it was on Donald Trump's part. And we need to disqualify him because his team rigged the election and committed all these election crimes. So S2, go ahead.
I believe I said that last night.
You may have.
So these polls that they're talking about, I think the folks that run those polls sometimes, I think they're dealing with new math, where they just ask the question enough times to get the answer that they want, and unfortunately, they don't ask it evenly from both sides. I'm going to go back to my theory in that I believe that Trump has already made his deal, and that Marcus Aurelius once said, look at the nature of something and what it is and what it does. And the Democrats cannot change their spots. They're always going to do what they've always done. And that's going to be to cheat. Would we expect anything less? No, we wouldn't. So they're going to have to do this. We know that they expect us to know that they're doing it. And they're going to play it right out in the open. I still hold to my theory that, they think they're going to bring out the BLMs and the Antifas and those folks, but all of the murmurings that I'm hearing in the communities from Antifa, not so much BLM. BLM basically stepped back into the shadows and rebranded itself after being exposed for the frauds they were. But Antifa is a completely different entity all unto itself, where you have people within those communities now that are starting to realize that they have been put out front as cannon fodder and that they are the useless idiots. And there are people within those communities that are saying, hey guys, this isn't for us anymore. And that's why they haven't been able to get as much steam going forward to use them again. I just don't see that happening. Now they may have something else that they're going to try that we haven't seen yet. That's entirely possible, but I don't think Antifa is largely going to be a part of that picture. In fact, I think Mike Shelby's been talking about that a lot lately too, and he tends to. I'm not going to say he agrees with me because I don't know Mike Shelby, but our theories indicate exactly that. So, as John said, the narrative is always the thing that they're going after. And if you want to know how they're lying, just go out. I don't care if you do it on Brave. You go out there and you do a search for a particular news article that's out there, and when you see every single mainstream news outlet out there exactly parroting the same language over and over and over again, you know it's a lie.
Yeah,
So
the Mockingbird media.
Yep. And that's my litmus test for everything they say. And it's unfortunately 90% of everything they say is a lie, and I can prove it.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think that they should lose their license to broadcast for knowingly publishing bullshit. Truth in advertising and truth in broadcasting. Both of those things need to come back in spades. Jeff O'Donnell.
Well, not only that, the Section 230 needs to be removed from social media as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the bullets that Todd and I have in our notes on the episode we're going to do on legislation changes that are going to be required to save the Republic. Jeff O'Donnell, your thoughts on, we're still, I guess, on InfoWars essentially here, but selling the steel to the weaker minded amongst us?
Yeah, there's always those that are going to listen to the loudest voice. And the media has positioned itself as that loud voice, and they just keep, the big lie, repeating the lie over and over again, and eventually becomes the truth. They're absolutely counting on that, and it's people like you that is going to have to combat that, by simply making sure that there are platforms for the truth. And one thing about truth, if you really have an open mind, when you see the truth, you know it. And that's the advantage that we have. The advantage we have is we're telling the truth. We don't have to make up lies on our side. We don't have to. And frankly, that sounds exhausting. I don't know how they do it all day. We have the truth on our side, free-thinking people. Hopefully there's enough of them to make a difference.
Real quick, think about this. What Jeff just said. X is running more efficiently right now because they got rid of all of the people spinning the lies.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but a lot of them. You think
lot.
about that. It's running more efficiently because they got rid of a lot of the, what do they call them?
CIA.
But I mean, there's whole career fields. There was. I remember watching a video. There's whole career fields for content moderation now, in the media sphere, and that's all those people do is spin lies and try and tell the truth is actually a lie. That's what they do.
And again, we're right back to my last comment. We've got to make it illegal for them to do this, or maybe not illegal, but we've got to make it against various regulations where you lose your broadcast license.
You have to make it painful. Painful.
Hit them in the pocketbook.
Exactly. Hit them in the pocketbook.
Wouldn't that be glorious? Wouldn't that be glorious? All of the news outlets that we've seen, all of our lies, all of a sudden just implode into oblivion.
Oh God, it'd be great.
That plus what did Soros just buy? 200-300 conservative radio stations?
110, I think.
It's a pretty big number, basically. So I've got a few more things I want to share here off of X, and we'll pivot a little bit. So this is an interesting flyer here in Tennessee that if you're not a United States citizen, it's a violation of state and federal law to vote. That not only needs to be plastered across every precinct, in my opinion, but it needs to be enforced, which of course they don't want to do that. So
in North Carolina, you have to show your ID now.
That's the way it should be. So John, you were saying Jeff O'Donnell, you were saying how the truth is on our side. We don't have to make things up. Here's a prime example of this witch and her husband always broadcasting complete and utter bullshit. But not only are they broadcasting complete and utter bullshit, it's they're projecting again what they're going to do. And they're saying that if Donald Trump is returned to power, that he will invoke the Insurrection Act and come after all of these media types and, hang them and put them in the gulag. And my response to that is, really, why didn't he do it in his first term then when he had all that power? This is not a hypothetical that what Donald Trump might do if he's given the reins. with that being said, I want to move on to this short video here with regards to a snail mail letter campaign that's been sent to Trump supporters in Pennsylvania, threatening them. And the language is not safe for work here. This guy drops a couple F-bombs, but let's hear what he's got to say.
Political violence okay to you guys? Because Democrats seem to think so. These letters are allegedly going around the Pennsylvania area, and they are threatening those who have Trump 2024 signs or merchandise displayed on their property. Pause to read the whole thing. I'll move out of the way real quick, but let's go through the most important parts. Start in the middle paragraph because that's where it is really important. It says, by supporting him, you are declaring your public support for a disregard of the law, civil discourse, and unity. You are indicating your hatred for minorities, immigrants, foreigners, women, education, the rights of your fellow citizens, the rights of who have contributed nothing but joy to the world. You are entitled to all of this. Support comes with a price and at a cost. There will be consequences. And it says that voting for Trump is impeding on this person's rights and that they will be visited in the future. That sounds like a threat. As someone who's voting for Donald Trump, I would never threaten someone voting for Kamala Harris. Yeah, I may joke with them and say, do you really want to vote that way? But everyone is entitled to vote for who they want to vote for. Political violence has taken place in this country, whether you are a liberal, a Democrat, Green Party, Third Party, whatever you identify with. Everyone should feel comfortable voting for who they want to vote for. What do you guys think about this? If you're in Pennsylvania, have you received this letter? If so, reach out to me and make sure to follow for more updates on this story.
So I'll go back to Jeff MD to start with. Do you have any recollections of anybody in the past 8 years that was legitimately a Trump supporter that sent out letters or made threats like that to the opposition?
Of course not. If there was, we'd never hear the end of it. If you take anything the Democrats, almost anything the Democrats say, and if you take it and you reverse Republican for Democrat and put it out there, people would be calling for your head. I mean, they would say, roll out a guillotine. And that's the gaslighting of the Democrats. They always accuse conservative, I shouldn't say Democrats, it's liberals and the progressives. They always accuse conservatives and libertarians, little L libertarians, of doing exactly what they are really doing. They call Trump a threat to democracy, yet they're the ones that are trying to put him in jail. They say Trump's going to do lawfare, but they bring 5 cases in 5 different jurisdictions against him at the same time. He's going to throw Democrats in prison. Well, let's see, sort of like Mike Flynn, Steve Bannon. The only ones thrown in prison have been Republicans. When's the last time a Democrat politician went to jail for something other than gross fraud and abuse in like Chicago, where they all go to jail for that eventually because they're all corrupt? You got Menendez. Yeah. Okay. Menendez had Gold Bar Bob had hundreds of thousands of dollars in graft in his house. Okay, he should go to jail, but he got off the last time they caught him. So keep that in mind.
He should go to jail just for being stupid.
Well, yeah, that's true. But you see it from the Democrats. You see the allegations. You see the actions. Yet they always accuse the conservatives of doing what they themselves are doing. It's like the man who's cheating on his wife who comes home and says, and she goes, "Where were you?" And he goes, "Where were you? What were you doing while I was out banging my secretary?"
That's exactly it. So, John, before you comment, I just want to rhyme off a few bullets here, and some of them are from Jeff O'Donnell. But there's all these pieces to the Democrats' war book plan, whatever you want to call it. So propaganda, gaslighting, as Jeff just spoke to, the lawfare, whether it be against Donald Trump or J6ers. But this letter that's going around is one more part of their campaign of threatening people. So it could be judges threatening people, like Jeff O'Donnell mentioned, the judge with the poor lady who just got a 9-year sentence that hopefully gets overturned on appeal, or Donald Trump lets her go. I mean, he did everything but physically threaten her of a beating, for crying out loud. You've got the letters that they're sending out. It's just one threat after another, right? Every seems to me, each of these things that goes back to threatening on the Democrats' part, I don't see a comparison on our part. Let's call it the mega part. But go ahead, John.
Well, and that guy was reading that letter, I just felt like I should get my Italian accent out and say, it'd be a real shame if something happened to your Aunt Martha and she slipped in the shower or something. Because that's what that feels like. It's like mob tactics. Like, oh, it'd be a real shame, you just give me some of this money. Don't vote for this guy. It's mob tactics. And I mean, it shouldn't make us surprised at all that these people would resort to this kind of stuff, because they grew up in criminal activity, guys. Not like your casual street thug, but like actual high level crime. You can't rise to political power in the Democratic Party without having to know how to commit these crimes, how to have a criminal mind. I mean, we made some jokes about Chicago, but I mean, where did Obama come from? He came from Chicago, guys.
Kenya.
Well, by way of Kenya, he came to Chicago. Very well. That was a good one. I stand corrected, but he's a criminal from the mob city of America. I mean, did you expect these tactics to be any different than what the mob did?
Well, one more threat we covered tonight that I forgot to throw in there was Dominion. Dominion threatening people from telling the truth about their machines. S2, I'll go to you next here. As far as
so, little known fact: the gentleman that used to work for Dominion was an Antifa member. Forget who that was. Jeff O'Donnell. Who was that again?
Must be Eric Coomer.
Yes, he was an Antifa member, by the way. At any rate, yeah, you want to send me a threatening letter? I'm going to pull a Saturday Night Live out on you. Ooh, you sent me a letter. Ooh. It makes me want to go out and get a Trump sign and put it in my front yard right now. And send me a letter, please, because I'll figure out where it came from, and I will send you a letter right back. It says, "This is my address. Come meet me here at this time, and we will take care of this face to face." Don't be a fucking coward.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Jeff O'Donnell.
Let's call these people what they are. They're brown shirts.
Yes.
And we're in the attempted next phase of the takeover of America, and it really is a Marxist style takeover. Think about it. First of all, you gin up an election to get rid of the legitimate leader. You punish the followers of that leader. Check. You attempt to imprison, or if you can't do that, kill the legitimate leader. Okay. And then we are in that last thing now, which another election will legitimize their power. And we cannot, we've got to understand it for what it is. These people. I'm not talking about your standard person voting Democrat that all they do is watch CNN and don't know anything. But
useful idiots.
Useful idiots, yes. But the people who write, letters like you're talking about, the people who are out knocking down yard signs and graffitiing places that I've seen, these are brown shirts. That's what they are. They are the shock troops of this junta that we are currently having some control over us. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, great comment on your part, Jeff. Brown shirts indeed. And then let me see. I think I found the quote that you were looking for from Eric Coomer right there. He was Dominion's vice president of U.S. engineering. Don't worry about the election. Trump's not going to win. I made fucking sure of that. And if anybody didn't catch that 4 years ago, this happened. All of us who have a memory remember this and won't forget it. But
that dude has a very punchable face.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's an understatement. So I want to next just share something briefly that there is still some good stuff going on out there. I'm not going to play this video. It's 14 minutes long, but it's a conversation between Tom Fitton and Charlie Kirk. So Tom Fitton is judicial washed. The guy's been a prolific requester of data under the Freedom of Information Act, and then he launches lawsuits. Yeah, I'm I don't know what his background is, but I suspect he's a trust fund baby. He's got a lot of money, do a lot of cool stuff, and we appreciate it. But there is still some good stuff. So lawsuits that were launched by Judicial Watch have taken out about 4 million dirty names from voter rolls. Is that enough? No. Do we need more? Yes. But there are some good things happening. And actually, I think, what's his name? Scott Pressler has been doing an amazing job registering Republicans in the state of Pennsylvania to hopefully win that state for Donald Trump. And he's done a phenomenal job. I will mention there were a bunch of donations made so that he could buy a car, and was made through GoFundMe. And GoFundMe now is not releasing the money to Scott Pressler, which is complete and utter.
Go figure.
It should be theft, right? GoFundMe should be like the president of GoFundMe and CEO should be in jail for theft.
Absolutely.
I think an anonymous letter to the IRS and have them audited would be a good idea.
Yeah, that won't happen.
They're in bed together. So that's the last point that I've got to throw out there right now. Is there any good news that you guys want to share? I'll start with Jeff MD first.
Heat finally broke out here. That's about it. So
all right. So the heat's broken in Arizona. Please make a note of that. That's Jeff MD's positive news for the day. John.
Let's see. Positive news. I think, I said this earlier. I think we're going to win this thing. I think it's going to get ugly afterwards. I think it's going to be really crazy. Buckle up. Christmas rolls around. We may be saying uncle, but I think we're going to win this thing. And I think they know it too.
Agreed.
So, buckle up. We're in for a crazy ride, but we're already on the runaway train, guys. So you might as well sit back, enjoy it, fight for every inch you can get. But I think we're going to win this thing. And I think if we can make it to Inauguration Day and past, there's going to be some serious repercussions to the deep state and all of this crap that's been going on in our country for the last, really, 12 out of the last 16 years.
Yep,
70 years.
S2. S2, let's hear your thoughts on anything positive that you have to share that's not weather related.
You sure you don't want me to mention ivermectin too? So I'm with John on this. I think this is going to be a very, very bumpy ride, and I think that even if Trump does get into office, I think we're going to have a replay of his first term again, where they're going to do everything they can do to obstruct any progress he's going to make. And I think, unfortunately, he's going to have to pull a Joe Biden and rule by executive order for a period of time and undo all of the executive orders that Joe Biden put into place. I also would say that there seems to be a lot of support, at least in my areas, for conservative people at the local levels. And that's something that we can't forget. No matter what happens at the federal end, that's a big piece of things. But we cannot forget about the local levels either. That's even more important, because that's how everything is run. It goes from the bottom up to the top and then back down again. So don't forget about your local people. Keep pushing for them too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jeff O'Donnell, anything positive that people can latch on to here?
They still haven't killed Donald Trump.
Where's that?
Fair enough. And let's hope that they don't succeed at that. So Jeff O'Donnell, I'm going to stick with you, and I'm going to go counterclockwise around our panel for this last piece. So one of the distinctions between Survival Dispatch News and other podcasts is that ever since we started Survival Dispatch News 2 years ago, I believe this is episode number 284, I insisted that at the end of each episode that we give tangible things that people can do to have a positive effect on whatever the thing is that we're discussing. Because if you look at a lot of podcasts, you'll hear people say, I see a bunch of talking heads, but there's nothing that we can do about it. And they're completely disenfranchised. And that's been something I've wanted to make sure is always addressed in SDN. So action items, what can our audience do in light of everything we've discussed on this episode? I've got 5 points I'm going to quickly go through. Then Jeff O'Donnell, I want to hear your extended thoughts on that. Number one, It's imperative that the election be too big to rig. Take one or more people with you on November the 5th who don't normally vote. Been saying that for a couple months now, but that's how we do it. Number 2, consider volunteering to be a poll watcher with somebody like True the Vote. There are other groups as well, but True the Vote will have 500 attorneys on standby. If you see something going on, whether you're a poll watcher or not, you can call and hopefully get something done immediately, because if you wait until the next day, the next week, we know what's going to happen. We saw it in 2020. Nothing's going to happen. Oh, that's too bad that happened, but we can't change anything now because the election results have been published and certified and blah, blah, blah. Number 3, Jeff O'Donnell alluded to this earlier. Share survival dispatch news with everybody in your circle. Maybe that was a
or circus, both work.
Yeah. There you go. And help us get the word out, because I believe the distinction between channels like ours, we're not the only ones, but we're like the last man standing as far as telling the truth is concerned, because there's nothing that's truthful on mainstream media. Doesn't matter if it's, radio, TV, printed, whatever the case may be. Number 4, join based community notes on X if you have time, and do the things that Jeff O'Donnell and S2 have said as far as fighting back and ratioing, this bullshit from the other side. And number 5, and I'll pull this up in a minute, follow Jeff O'Donnell's Telegram channel. He's a prolific poster. There's new stuff up there all the time, and it's really valuable information, especially on this particular topic. Jeff O'Donnell, what else do you think that our audience can do to have a positive effect on this election shenanigans?
Well, let me start by saying, if you pray hard, because ultimately, America is wandering in the desert right now. Okay, we've been, we were freed with the election of Donald Trump in 2016, and now we're wandering the desert. And I don't know about you guys, but I think we've wandered long enough, and it's up to God that if He brings us back. More tangible things. And this is controversial, but I don't know why it is. It shouldn't be. Vote election day if you can, and tell your friends to also. It shouldn't be that big a deal. A lot of people are saying, no, we got to vote early. I mean, even I know that Trump and that are telling people to vote early. All the data tells me that is the most dangerous thing to do, because those are the most manipulated ballots. So if you can, vote election day. I'm not telling you not to vote if you can't vote election day. Please vote however you can. But if you can get there election day, we need to swamp those polls. If you're a poll watcher, as he said, stand your ground, do your job. Know that they're going to try things. Watch for them. It's a new game, new ball game, that if you've done it before, it needs to be a whole different game now. And I think those are the big things that I think that people can be doing, proactively.
Appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you. Very well said. S2.
Yeah, so I'm with Jeff on this, and I'm going to reiterate it. Vote on election day. Think about it, people. Why on earth would you tell the enemy what they need to cheat to win? Why would you do that? Secondly, be observant. If you see something, report it immediately. For instance, in a state where you are required to show ID, if you see a poll worker not ask for ID, report it immediately. It will be answered. Third, be engaged with your fellow humans. Recognize that people out there don't necessarily have all of the information and all of the facts they need to make an informed decision. Too many people for too long have just gone down the ballot and said, oh, Democrat, 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 Democrat. If they start talking about, well, Trump is going to stop abortion. Oh, Trump is going to, he likes his Project 2025. Inform them. Be nice, but, inform them that these things are absolutely not true. This is the problem that we have, is we have people that have just played this game for so long and have not used their freaking brains to say, well, maybe, wait a minute, are they lying to me? Maybe, could they possibly be? Yeah, sure. And I'm going to take a little play out of Mike Lindell's playbook here. Order your absentee ballot. We know the vectors that they've used to cheat in the past. Absentee ballots are one of them. Order your absentee ballot. If you walk into the poll that day and say, oh, you've already voted by absentee ballot, you can pull that ballot out of your pocket and say, no, I haven't, because I have it right here in my hand. Now, give me, what do they call that, Jeff? I forget the
provisional ballot.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Ask for a provisional ballot. Ask that your previous vote be scratched from the record, and get your provisional ballot and vote the way you want to. Tell these assholes to fuck off. Pardon my French. No, sorry, not. I'm unapologetic about that.
And that's not French.
No, it is not.
All right.
It's Chinglish.
Go ahead and go to Jeff MD, because I want to show the graphic when I go, Chris. So go ahead and go to Jeff MD.
I'll be
All
real
right.
quick then. What everybody else says. I will. One question though about the wait till election day to vote. Unless you're in Maricopa County, where in which case the ballots didn't fit in the scanner, and then they shoved them in a pile of provisional ballots that then got just thrown in with the ones that had already been counted, so they never got counted. If you're confident that your vote will be counted on election day, fine. But beyond that, what I would say, be prepared for heavy rolls afterwards. Have food, have water, generator, all that. Be prepared for shit to hit the fan, because if Trump wins, shit's gonna hit the fan. It's just and when shit hits the fan, it splatters. So don't be downwind. But be prepared, because it could get ugly, especially if you live in a big city where Antifa may come rolling out, or trying to be the douchebags that they are. Be ready.
Yeah. Well,
I have a fifth point that I would like to add on to something Jeff just said
You've
there.
already had your points.
No, this is important. This is important. We had intel come out of Oklahoma yesterday. Make sure that when you have your ballot in hand, before you insert it into the ballot counting machine, that all of the marks line up properly in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, it could be moved over to adjudication, and then you might have some Democrat that's going to change your vote for you, just as we saw tonight in that video. So make sure those marks are lined up properly. Make sure the plus sign is in the middle of the circle, not on the outside. If it's on the outside, the ballot reader will not read it correctly.
I appreciate you adding that, S2. John, before you go, I do want to say one thing. We've already uncovered 2 threats of terrorist attacks that were planned for November the 5th. That's all we know from open source intel. There may be more that's closed source, but it would not surprise me to see a terrorist attack try to disrupt our elections by doing it on November the 5th. John, go ahead.
All right. Well, Jeff kind of stole some of the things I was going to say, which is MD, but I do think that we need to be prepared for after the election. Election night's going to be an absolute and total crazy. I foresee visions of 2016s and the liberal meltdowns on news networks, and we'll be here for all of that. But be prepared for what's coming afterwards, because while you may be able to wound these people, they will come back. The empire does strike back, and it's going to try and strike back. For lack of a better term, and a Star Wars reference. Hey, Chris, go ahead and throw that graphic up there if you can. Quick announcement for all of you guys.
I expect another hurricane.
It could be.
Another,
Tune in to
pandemic.
either Righteous Savage. No, I said. Have you got that graphic, Chris?
There it is.
Okay. Tune in to Righteous Savages and Survival Dispatch News. All of our channels will be going full tilt on election night, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, our normal start time. It will probably not be a normal stop time. We're going to have all-stars stopping in, commenting. We're going to be looking at the data that's rolling out, and it's going to be a long night, but hopefully you guys will join us and trust us with the information, and it's going to be a lot of fun and hopefully a lot of celebrating that night. But join us on election night, 7 p.m., November 5th.
There will be a lot of celebrating 10 days afterwards.
Well, yeah. But we'll be here, and we may even have to do some emergency streams the next morning. Who knows? I've already taken the days off of work because I think it's going to be pretty crazy. So,
especially in Maricopa.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm going to be started Pennsylvania, where they, we're just bringing in coolers at 1 a.m. for, full of ballots or whatever.
I'll bet you they don't hire Jesse Morgan again.
Right. Okay. So we're going to wrap up here. Just a few quick things. Number one, we have a really loyal follower, Nestor. He's a professor. He sends a ton of insightful stuff our way. He put a brief together that covers a bunch of the legal stuff that we've been discussing recently, Insurrection Act, Posse Comitatus Act, etc. That has been posted over on our Patreon, patreon.com/survival dispatch. $9.99 for paid members, or you can get a free membership. And I believe it's posted so that it doesn't matter if you're free or paid, you can still view the document that Nestor sent. And it's really, really good. And I really appreciate it. A quick question for our panel. Did anybody get served French fries by Donald Trump today by any chance?
No. I did have French fries for dinner tonight.
Tell me that kid who was running that station won't remember today for the rest of his life.
I wanted to be the guy that was going through the drive-through. Imagine that.
It's funny you should say that, because I was thinking to myself, I wonder what the Secret Service is doing as far as checking people. Did you see the lineup of cars of people trying to get in? I mean, did they go through every single vehicle and make sure that nobody was going to try and assassinate them at the drive-through window? I don't know, but definitely a big job for the Secret Service. So moving on to the conflicted question of the night. Our new friend Sebastian is faced with a decision to continue to serve his country or to take care of his family. Where would you personally draw the line between serving society and taking care of your family? Are you a traitor to your profession if you leave your post to protect and care for your family? Jeff MD.
I'm going to do the old CIA answer. It depends. But seriously, I have to choose between my family and my job. It's going to be my family. Now, but the way it depends is you have to assess, okay, what's the negative of you not doing your job? And what's the likelihood that there's going to be a significant threat to your family? Now, if your family's in Missouri and the Chinese invading California, what are the odds of the Chinese getting to Missouri anytime soon? Not good. However, yeah, you've got to really look at your duty to your family, your duty to your country, and where is the realistic, what's going to realistically happen, where does that fall, and then make the decision from there. But if it comes down to, standing on a street corner or directing traffic or saving my family, I'm going to save my family.
Well done. Jeff O'Donnell, we'll go to you next.
I think it is a very situational thing, but I do agree with what the other Jeff just said. I think that what it comes down to is a little bit of calculus, in that if your family is in real peril, then your responsibility is to them. In most cases, I think it would be a case that, there is probably someone else who can do your job, and that's something you got to consider when you're making that decision. But all things being equal, family first has got to be first. That's what makes it all work.
Agreed, Jeff. Good answer. S2.
It's been fun, but it ain't been real fun. I'm going home, because if things like that are going on, nobody's going to see me going anywhere.
Fair enough. John.
I think we're all kind of simpatico with where we're at on this stuff. My wife, my kids, even my community matters more to me than dying on a field of battle for some politician to enrich themselves. And that's honestly what we see a lot of now. Now, there is something to be said for the brotherhood. And when you're in battle, the men, a lot of those guys that go overseas, they're not fighting for the politicians in Washington. They're fighting for the guy next to them. And so that's always something to consider. But if I'm stateside and this is just ridiculous, I'm going to self-assess and I'm going to go home and I'm going to spend time with my family and we're going to get through it together instead of, instead of being separated.
And I'll add to that, John, by saying that just because you leave your post does not mean you have stopped serving. You go home to serve your community and your family. So you are still on duty. We all took an oath, and that oath never expires.
Bravo.
Yep.
So I would add just something from a contextual standpoint. We're all a little bit older, and I think that age would matter for this. If I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, and I wasn't married and didn't have children, well, then I would obviously stay at my post. But being the age that the rest of us are on here, and we probably got a spread from 40s to 60s, but I'm not leaving my wife home alone when the shit's hitting the fan. Not at 55 years old. So that's an easy decision for me to make. But I think Jeff O'Donnell hit the right word, peril. If your family's in peril, I don't know that you could ever forgive yourself if you didn't respond to help and save them because of, as John so eloquently put it, some politician wants you to give your life up for them. I think that answers it pretty clearly. So we will be back tomorrow night and the following night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Would appreciate if you all could tune in. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. For our panel members, after the bumper, you can stay on if you wanted to have a AAR conversation. But other than that, God bless America.
Hoorah.